Ooh. Well, into week number 2 of running 100 plus miles a week, and a miracle has occurred. I'm doing 3 miles longer today than I planned on, because a friend of mine, Tanya, joined me for the first 3 miles of the day. 3.5. So I was talking to her as she was getting adjusted, and I was telling her a story of how I was able to break my good friend DW, dimwit, the self-righteous youth pastor that was abusing his wife, and then blaming yours truly for it. Because a man shouldn't have to share his wife with men who are her friend. It's against the Bible to be a woman and have male friends. So the only option is to abuse your wife. So I didn't like that when I found out about it, and I had him join me for a run, and it took about, it wasn't long, it was less than a mile to break it down with him and get him to the point where really he just suffering from significant mental illness. He endured the pandemic. He ended up getting a job where he's wearing a mask all day through his firefighter training, and that was enough to tip his little noggin over the hill. And if you're curious, like, the science behind, I rattle off these concepts, look up allostatic load. So anyone who's like pro-vaccine right now or anti-vaccine, you just have to ask your question, like, what is your allostatic load? Like, how much chemical, mental, and physical stress is your body under? Because as you add more and more onto that load, there's a tipping point where the brain can't handle it and it has to shut down. Full neurological episode. And that's why some people have very severe reactions to vaccines. Some people die. Some people end up with cardiomyelitis or heart attacks or strokes. It's because their allostatic load is already too high. They can't handle injecting a bunch of poisons into them. So, I was telling my friend Tanya, about this breaking of this poor soul, and how it's actually a skill set that I have from being a personal trainer, because we all lie to ourselves. And with personal training, typically people want to have accountability to get in shape, lose weight, whatever it is. Usually it's related to some kind of like event of family reunion, divorce, or wedding, or something like that. And then after they hit that event, they just go back to being themselves. And my saying when I had my personal training business was, if I can get them to cry, I can get them to try. I mean, if I could find the default within their brain that they're so deeply hurt about and they're coping around, then once you can expose it, then it's a matter of just letting it heal. But hiding it doesn't allow it to heal. It just keeps it buried, keeps it guarded. There's a whole neurological process involved in that, and there's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, if you're interested in healing. So I'm telling this my friend, I can break anybody. Let's go for a run. And it's not out of intention or malice. I never know what it's going to be. It's just a matter of
lap 5,
asking
905,
questions, and then listening, and then continue to ask questions. And then as the person is running, they're neutralizing the stress response by burning off energy. And you can get at the root of what they care about. And so, with this conversation, I'm like, I can break anybody. She's like, I'll go for a run with you. haven't run. She hasn't run or worked out in forever. You sure about that? So she joined me today, and she cranked out 3.5 miles, which is pretty impressive for someone who hasn't worked out for months. And we got in the conversation of this idea of being broken. Have you heard, like, I've heard so many people that are like, I'm not broken. And then it's like, it's this statement of like, just leave me alone kind of thing, or stop trying to fix me. And it is an interesting thing, because the people that say those things aren't doing anything to make themselves healthy or strong. They're just sad and sick and depressed and anxious. Because I'm not broken. It's a protective statement. Leave me alone. Don't ask me questions. Don't try to get into my life. Stay away. Stay away. Stay guarded. Isn't that a kind of an interesting thing right now? This distance that we all put up around each other, where evolutionarily and neurologically our species needs other people. And even in the Bible it says we're not meant to be alone. It's not good for men to be alone. Our nervous system's wired for other people. And then as I've been talking with different women more recently there, who have been used and abused and mistreated, and they develop this status or this identity of like, I just need to become someone who doesn't rely on other people. I just need to be okay being alone, which is so counter to our innate survival mechanism wired within our nervous system. We've already saw what happens when you isolate people during the pandemic. Not good. And by the way, this little magic box, digitally talking to people, it's not the same. We get a little hit of dopamine because the light patterns within the screen, but it actually weakens our substantia nigra. So I just love my online community. It's all pretend. It's light patterns that are actually just weakening your brain. So let's dive into the idea of I just need to be okay being alone. I think there's a better way to word it, because words are important. Okay? I think a better phrasing is, I need to hold myself to a standard regardless if I'm with somebody else or not. And that way, and maybe that equates to being happy. I don't really know. I don't really get that. I don't really get the whole being happy thing. Like, I'm just going after what makes me happy. Like, what does that mean? Like, we have done studies which shows our happiness can be changed based on like the temperature of a room. But again, staying in something that quote unquote makes us feel happy ends up weakening us systemically, which makes us sicker. So it's like, I just want to do what's happy, knowing that ultimately staying in that point is going to weaken you and make you sick. So I get confused. And this is why I have a hard time just hanging out with people, I guess. Not doing something, because I just get confused. Not that smart. Talks about the whole head injury. Remember that in last Facebook Live. So then how do we unwind it? Right? How do we? Because the same conversations that I had with these women are like people that got in these relationships, and then the outcome is the same. addiction, cheating, lying, like the literally exact same situations over and over, the same cycles. So, what's the answer? I don't know what the answer is. I just know that what has worked well for me, which is training my nervous system to function at its peak ability. And I was on a mission for a while to like help people not make bad choices, not have bad habits. You know, eating crap food, processed food, sweets, taking drugs. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I've been in the health and wellness arena for over 20 years. I failed my mission. So, if the idea of like, okay, just don't put bad stuff into our body, don't poison our mind with technology isn't really what people are going to do, then how do you balance the equation? And for me, what's worked well for me is just developing a standard of movement, connection, and creating. And so, and that standard then is what creates balance within the nervous system. Because the disconnection, which leads to poor health in relationships and physical body, mental health, is really, can all be summed up with an overactive dorsal vagal response, overactive fight or flight response, overactive amygdala, the inability to rev down and heal. So movement, burns off the energy produced by the amygdala, satisfying the need for the fight or flight response, and allows it to start to rev down, stimulates the ventral vagal nervous system. And how much movement? Oh shoot. I'll let you know when I figure it out. When I'm in this godforsaken state of Washington that is politically so messed up, that was became a rather large source of stress for myself and my family when everyone wanted to pretend like fabric could stop a virus. This state, there's so many negative associations in my mind that in order for my HRV to not tank while I'm here, meaning actively shut down, actively digress into dorsal vagal response, I need to move my body enough and that amount, since I willingly decided to do this training plan is 16 miles a day and then doing yoga for an hour and a half a day. But I'm not the normal.
Lap 6, 9:32.
Because based on a couple factors, determines how much movement it's going to take to balance that equation. Factor number one, how significant is the stressor? Okay, so it's like, oh, okay, I might get a talking to by my boss, or I might upset this person, or I might get a speeding ticket. I don't know, whatever the degree is. Times the amount of time you were in that status. For me, and being in here, I was here for 3 years, and I went from being the president of multiple nonprofit organizations, leading large groups of people, having people trust me to having those boards all tell me that I was bad and turning me into the government because I would not cover my face with a piece of fabric for a pretend campaign that they all knew was pretend. It wasn't like these people were like, this really does stop a virus. They all said, this is what we're being told to do. We don't believe in it. And you need to do it too. Oh, well, that's what I called shame, blame, gang bang. Doesn't feel good. Thank you. And then being investigated by the government, being told that I was going to be fined thousands of dollars per interaction that I had without a mask on for years, right? So that's the allostatic load. Have a good one. Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of warm to wear a jacket, huh? And so that's a lot of pre-associations within the brain. Because there was a study that was done by Ivan Pavlov where he took a bell, rang the bell, and then showed the dog food. And the dog then started to associate the bell with the food. And so it would start to salivate. And then he got to the point where he rang the bell, showed the food so many times that he trained the dog to salivate when they rang the bell. No food was coming. And so the brain does that with everything. So my brain has equated Washington State with two-faced, spineless, unethical people who will report you to the government, and then governments who are spineless, unethical, terrible human beings that will threaten you even though you have better health outcomes than they did. There's a lot of negativity that's got to get burned off. So the point of this story isn't the woe is me. The point of this story is just to find yourself having anxiety or frustration or depression. Do the math. Find out how long has the stressor been there, how severe the stressor is, and how big does your brain perceive that to be a danger. And Cody, now that you're on, you might say, well, Devin, how did I come up with such a standard when everyone else is just a bunch of spineless, weak fish? Well, the same standard that my wife has held me to, which is follow Jesus' example. Jesus' example is pretty clear in the Bible. Didn't ask Luke for advice, didn't ask Luke to follow him. Luke was a medical doctor for those churchy people, or non-churchy people. So move your body to dissipate the energy, which is also kind of like a little bit of a messed up thing, because think about prison system and our jail system. There's people that are neurologically imbalanced, they do something bad, usually related to addiction, because their brains were trained for addiction because of the food that they were given. Another great book of The Least of Us, which is a good read, about the opioid and meth epidemic that was created by our food industry and how it trained our brains for addiction. And we just put these people in jails where they just don't move, which then furthers the imbalance neurologically. So move. First part of breaking stuck patterns. Second part, connect, which really is all around activating the ventral vagal nervous system, which is directly controlled by the vagus nerve and the prefrontal cortex. So this one is a very simple one also, getting chiropractic care, upper cervical spine, lumbosacral plexus does about like 25%. Reading scripture also activates prefrontal cortex. In fact, that was my first book that I wrote. Fog to Fire is basically a 300-page how to use your vagus nerve guide. And within it, I put the 30 Proverbs, 30, 31, I don't remember now. I read them every day for a year. I still don't know if there's 30 or 31. And to just, so even if people didn't really enjoy the book, at least they get some vagus nerve activation by reading the Proverbs. And then being in nature. And the being in nature one, that's worth diving into because going back again, I like to balance everything with science and scripture because I think the more I understand science, the more I appreciate scripture. The more I understand scripture, the more I appreciate science. Especially when there is a simple profession that says we need to stop believing in scripture and only trust the science. I wonder who controls that profession. Because in the beginning of the book, the Bible, we are Adam and Eve, or Adam, and then Eve shortly after, is in the Garden of Eden. Completely in nature, naked. And that was when we were in perfect communion with God. And if you've heard, like, oh, camping is good for you, hiking is good for you, going for a walk, having plants is good for you. It's because everything else that's not that is bad. Furthers our process of disconnect. So, being in nature taps us in with the presence and the commune with God. And so, the third, or not, I don't know. At this point in my run, I'm running out of brain sugar, I think. So whatever point I'm on with connect is connecting with other people. And this is not just being around other people. It's moments of emotional connection and
lap 7, 9 minutes.
Laughing. So, if you're like, hey, and I'm not going to really want to go run and move my body a lot, you can actually stack these connection points. You can stack all these points, then it amplifies their effect. So going outside with a friend, telling them jokes, being inappropriate, making them laugh, all work on balancing this neurological equation, breaking the imbalance. Alright, so we got movement, we got connection, and then we have creating. Okay, so creating is a twofold because it can be done with get real close. Producing something, but then also creating new skill sets. So if you can do both, it's like a double doozy. And this is where, in all my experience with training clients, personal training clients, with patients, with friends over the years. I mean, maybe I should ask the question, like, if you look at your own life, can you see how when all three of these things are in place, like, you're naturally friends with the people? And then can you also see now as our world has become more digital, how it's more and more difficult to do all three of these things. Because the creating part activates what's called the substantia nigra, which is the part of our brain that produces dopamine, which is what is the primary clean energy driver within our brain and within our body. And dopamine deficiency is really the main vicious cycle for addiction. So addiction is never having energy, never having any kind of positive feelings until you get your artificial hit of dopamine, whether it's from drugs or porn or alcohol or medication, which then over time the substantia nigra continues to get weaker, which then is why people need more drugs. You know, and if you explain this concept, my homeboy Cody on here, he is well aware because he works with people that struggle with addiction and helping them free in a Christ-centered way. But if you ask the layperson, like about drug addiction and like drug addicts, like everyone's like, yeah, that's why they keep on needing more, because they just build up a tolerance to it. And I would challenge you. Hey, beautiful. Woo! Smoking hot chick just drove by me. And I challenge you to change your verbiage within your brain from they build up a tolerance to it to their neuroanatomy, the substantia nigra gets weaker. So they need more to supplement the lack of dopamine produced by the brain. And now this is where I think it's the most fucked up, because people go to their medical doctor, they're legal drug dealers who give them drugs, and we pay for it with our tax dollars. You're welcome. The medical doctor says, hey, this is a mental illness. You have depression. It hurts everywhere. But now, actuality, what you have is a weakened prefrontal cortex, weakened substantia nigra, and overdeveloped amygdala. You have imbalance within your nervous system. But they'll give you a label, and that feels good, right? I finally have an answer. Why do I feel bad? And then they say, here's your solution. Drugs. And then they tell you, we're going to try this for a while, play with the doses. And then all of a sudden, life is manageable again. It's even. What a miracle. Good thing we all pay into this beautiful healthcare system we have. We didn't just create a drug addict. No. Because the medical doctors are managing them. We're just treating a condition. And then over time, substantia nigra, again, continues to get weaker. Prefrontal cortex continues to get weaker. I have a good friend of mine, actually, was a runner. Healthy, super active person. She was on the other side of the whole pandemic war. She was like the pro-vaccine, pro-mask. And she was in quite a bit of a position of authority when it came to decisions for children, and so she, very much like myself, received death threats on the other side, like, how dare you put my kids in masks. And here's the crazy thing, this person was a patient of mine the whole time, the non-masked investigated by every government entity clinic. This person who was pro-vaccine, pro-mask, was one of my patients, and a great patient, whole family under care. It shows that you can actually love people that are on different sides of a war. Because believe you me, I don't know, brain drain. Like, we are in a war right now for our kids' salvation. And it appears that the other church that is not demonstrating the simple things that Jesus demonstrated is winning that war. But nonetheless, this poor person who I love ends up going to the doctor. You have depression. Gets put on beds. And now she's a person who doesn't run because she doesn't quite have the motivation to do it anymore. And she doesn't know why, because she's a lot more even now than she was before. She just got turned into a drug addict. And then time goes on, and then, oh gosh, it's not really working like it used to. Oh, that's normal. That's why they made this new medication. That's so different. We'll put you on this. No difference. So, if you're doing a self-reflection ball right now, and here's the simple. I'm a big fan of acronyms, where, Christ told us to be like children. So if you find yourself not acting like a child, hey Fred, nice job on the race the other day.
Oh, hey.
You still got it, man.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. How old are you now? He's mid-deaf, I guess. He's like 84, did the turkey trot a couple weeks ago. So, kids run, kids play. I have my little blonde-haired white children. We go into villages with Haitians and Dominicans. They don't care about the color of the skin. They don't care about kids being different. They don't care that kids speak a different language they don't speak. They will go and play. They naturally play. They run.
Lap
They
8,
laugh.
9:27.
They are kids. And the other kids play too. At some point we stopped acting like kids, right? And Christ calls us to be like kids. That's a whole nother neuroanatomy conversation, but so the acronym to find out, like, am I someone who is a little imbalanced, is, are you aged? Are you aged? Do you have a level of anxiety, distressing anxiety? That is twofold. It's your amygdala coursing stress hormones through your body, causing a level of tension, ready to spring to action. And then it's also down regulation of the vagus nerve, causing that pit in the stomach kind of feeling anxious. Are you guarded? Do you find yourself, when someone's asked you a question and something's like a little personal, being like, why do you ask that? Do you feel the need to protect your identity, whatever that means, from any kind of thing that might expose any kind of weakness? Being the perfect person that you are. Guarded. Are you guarded? Are you exhausted? Yeah. Meaning, someone was like, hey, you gonna go for a 20-mile run? Something our species did just normally all the time for like hundreds of thousands of years. We're gonna go play, we're gonna do something. Just exhausted. Been peopling all day. Can't play with my kids right now. Worked all day. It got a lot on my mind. I'm exhausted. And then number D, defensive. And what defensiveness, you might say like guard and defensive, that's kind of the same, isn't it? I mean, kind of that. But when I mean defensive, I mean this statement that I'm about to say. Hi there. Which is, I only did it because, and this is like a fun one, I'm like, I only got this job because I need health insurance. I only went to school because I needed to do in order to get the job that I wanted. And I guess the best way to describe the defensiveness is like the explanation of a thing that defends your method of why you did it to keep yourself in a positive light. My favorite is like pandemic stuff. I only wore a mask when I had to. It's weird. When was that? Oh, when I did XYZ. When I was on the ice skating rink, when I went to stores, when I went to work. I only did it because when I think of my friend who was going to run with me on Wednesday, and he, by the way, I knew going into this, there was a 0% probability that he was showing up the next day, Mike. 0%. However, I do believe in miracles. Kim, good to see your beautiful profile on there. And my friend Mike has made some, he did a good job of destroying his life coming out of the pandemic. And me and him had a little competition. You know, I walked away from $1 million business, destroyed every relationship I had based on the stupid government mandates, insulted a whole lot of people in the process, spent all their money to buy a 47-acre healing and training facility in the Dominican Republic, and then moved there with my children. And he took a different road, but nonetheless, I'm like, hey, you wanna go for a run? Yeah. I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna prove it to you, and I'm gonna prove it to myself. And then I said, well, you know, I mean, that's really not necessary. Like, you don't have to prove anything. I'm gonna go run. And you want to join me, then you can. But if not, that's all good too. And he's like, no, I need to prove it to myself. And at this point, like, I'm already like, now I was at 0% certain that, I was 100% certain he was not showing up. There's 0% chance he was coming. If it could have been like more than 0, like in the absolute, I mean, that statement right there concreted it in. Because people that are gonna do something do it. They don't say they're gonna do it. They do it and then they tell the people that they did it. Like, what did you do? And he had a date that night. Next day, message in the morning. Not showing, I'm not coming. And then he says to me, this is why it's hard to be friends with you, Devin. Because you put so much pressure on people to do things that they don't want to do. Which I said to him, why do you do that? Like, first of all, you put your pressure on yourself, like made it about this like moral thing of like, I'm gonna do this because it's the right thing to do. And then you there's no way. I mean, he's not a person that does things because it's a moral thing. This is not who he is. If it was, his life would look different. It's like, so why do you put pressure on yourself, A, to be something you're not, and then B, the next day, blame me. And then, you know, and I was amazed by this. And this is where I think, you know, miracles do happen. He said, I guess it's just my defense mechanism of continuing to justify my bad choices by blaming other people. Oh my gosh. Defensive. I just did this because. So, now, what did we cover today? A, you're not broken. B, stating that you're not broken as a means to stay weak is an empowerment. And it's not, what is the popular phrase of a boundary. Fuck that phrase. Boundaries are for weak people who are putting up a defense. As if you want to have yourself surrounded by people that you have to defend yourself from. Instead, hold yourself to a standard that you do in order to keep yourself balanced with movement, connection, and creating. And what you'll find is you will be alone for a while as you strengthen that standard. And then what will happen is that God will start putting people back in your life that will meet that standard. Which is kind of a funny, ironic thing I haven't thought about until now. It's actually, if you look at Jesus' example in the Bible, like that's what he did. Like amassed a big following, and then there would be a teaching that a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's too far," and then he'd be by himself for a bit, and then he'd do the same thing again. And
lap 9, 9:52.
I'm part of a group online. The question was posed, like, if Jesus knew he would just come back to life after being crucified, like, what real sacrifice was that for him to make? And my response, and I don't think this is the same for women, I can only speak to men, and I think that's why Jesus came as a man and not as a woman. And if you look at the example in the Bible, like, women knew to follow Jesus. They didn't have to be asked. Men did. So I think there's a lot of depth there of how men need to look to Jesus' example, because we're too freaking stupid. And my response back was, he didn't come to make a sacrifice. He came to set the example, right? That it is better to suffer through pain and humiliation than it is to retreat or try to defend yourself. And that's a lesson that was hard earned by me over the last 5 years. I spent so much energy trying to defend myself, which then imbalances the brain more. All right, we got a mile more to sprint. See you tomorrow.